A smooth meeting with public participation. So please remember to begin by silencing your communication to other communication devices such as your cell or your desk phone. And after each agenda item, I will announce an opportunity for public comment. And if you want to participate, you'll see somewhere on your screen, you'll see the ability to click on raise your hand, and then I'll address you as those come up. So let's get started with a roll call.
District 2?
Here.
District 3? District 3?
I'm here.
Thank you. Beaumont?
Here.
Banning? Calamasa?
Here.
Canyon Lake?
Here.
Cathedral City?
Here.
Coachella? Desert
Here.
Hot Springs? Oh, thank you. Desert Hot Springs?
Present.
Lake Elsinore?
Here.
Palm Desert? Palm Springs?
Here.
San Jacinto? Riverside?
Here.
Wildemar? We do have a quorum.
Okay, great. Let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. We could all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll start with item number 4, public comments. If there are any, are there any comments on items not listed on the agenda?
I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised.
Okay. Are there any additions or revisions to the agenda?
No, sir.
All right, so next up is the consent agenda. Yeah, if anyone would like to speak on the consent agenda before the calendar, before we address it, please signify by raising your hand. And if not, we'll go ahead and take a vote. And from this point forward, if you are going to make a motion or a second, please identify who you are.
Move approval, Raymond Gregory.
Second, Spiegel.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
Beaumont?
Yes.
Banning? Calamasa?
Yes.
Canyon Lake?
Aye.
Cathedral City?
Yes.
Coachella?
Yes.
Desert Hot Springs?
Aye.
Lake Elsinore?
Aye.
Palm Desert? Palm Springs?
Aye.
San Jacinto? Riverside?
Aye.
Wildemar? The item passes.
Thank you. Item number 7, adopt a resolution number 21001 related to procurement policy manual. Resolution number 21002 related to electronic signature use policy. And we'll have a report from Matt Wallace.
Good morning, Chair White and committee members. Revisions to RCTC's procurement policy manual are being presented in light of the recent implementation and management services agreement between RCTC and the Western Riverside County Regional Conservation Authority. The next slide provides a background of RCTC's procurement history. Next slide, please. RCTC's initial procurement policy manual, or PPM, was adopted in April 2007 in response to the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, review. Subsequently, in 2008, RCTC adopted a comprehensive PPM and established a centralized procurement function in 2008, which is responsible for the purchase of all goods and services in accordance with the RCTC PPM. The procurement department currently consists of 3 budgeted staff, and Jose Mendoza is the procurement manager. Since 2012, RCTC has used Planet Bids to provide online vendor and bid management support services. Through the use of Planet Bids, RCTC has realized efficiency gains such as vendor registration and profile management, greater outreach to vendors, bid document distribution, customer email notification, and secure e-bidding. Planet Bids is also used by other governmental agencies in Southern California, which allows for bidding collaboration. RCTC has adopted several revisions to update the PPM to comply with FTA, Federal Highway Administration, Caltrans, Federal Office of Management and Budget Uniform Guidance, and best practices. The PPM has successfully guided RCTC's procurements for design build, construction, preliminary engineering, and professional services, as well as supplies, equipment, and materials. Next slide, please. RCTC and the RCA entered into the Implementation and Management Services Agreement effective January 1st, 2021. Under the agreement, RCTC shall administer, coordinate, and supervise the activities of the RCA as set forth in the RCA Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement and shall act for RCA in accomplishing its purposes. Among the reasons stated by the RCA Board for management transition were management efficiencies and consolidation of administrative functions, as well as adding some of the professional practices of RCTC to the administration of RCA and the MSHCP. As stated in the staff report for the agreement, RCTC general administrative policies and processes, including procurement of consultant and vendor contracts, will be utilized. RCA's procurement policies can be found in the RCA bylaws and in Ordinance 0802. Staff has identified procurement policies as an immediate policy that is necessary to conduct business pursuant to RCA's board mandate. Doing so will enable streamlined administration while maintaining accountability of expenditure of public funds. In many ways, bringing the RCTC PPM to RCA will strengthen pre-existing RCA procurement policies. Next slide, please. The proposed RCTC RCA PPM is comprehensive and organized into 11 chapters. The first 2 cover the procurement process and general procurement matters. Chapters 3 through 7 cover specific procurement policies for competitive, non-competitive, and emergency procurements. And chapters 8 through 11 cover applicable laws and regulations, disposal of surplus property, other procurement matters, and payments. Specific changes related to RCTC include the following. Chapter 1 adds references and definitions for RCTC and RCA and revises sections within the chapter to make provisions applicable to both agencies, revises the time and materials contract section order to show general requirements first and specific federal requirements second. Chapter 2 increases the executive director's single signature authority aggregate contract limit from 1.5 million to 2 million per fiscal year, changes the procurement officer designation from the chief financial officer to the deputy director of financial administration, and increases the project's delivery director and toll program director authority to execute change orders up to $250,000 and requires any change order over $250,000 to be approved by the executive director. Chapter 9 on disposal of surplus property removes references to real property, which will be addressed in an update to RCTC's current right-of-way policies manual. Other changes made throughout the manual include changing references to the agencies as appropriate and specific RCA matters. Attachment 2 to the staff report provides a redline version of the PPM showing these changes for RCTC as well as RCA changes. Next slide, please. The PPM provides for the use and acceptance of electronic signatures in accordance with an adopted policy. Due to the impacts of COVID-19 on work environments, the RCTC Executive Director, in consultation with legal counsel, established an electronic signature policy. Subsequently, staff worked with legal counsel to develop a comprehensive electronic signature policy that allows the use of electronic signatures in lieu of manual signatures when permitted by law and establishes when an electronic signature may replace a manual signature. The electronic signature use policy will allow the implementation of guidelines for the use and acceptance of electronic signatures used to conduct official business of RCTC and RCA. The use of electronic signature technology will allow the agencies to collect and preserve signatures on documents quickly, securely, and efficiently. Additionally, the policy will help reduce the waste of paper, increase the efficient use of public resources, and ensure the security and authenticity of electronic records, including electronic signatures. The proposed policy is included as attachment 4 to the staff report. Next slide, please. This item is for the committee to approve the revised RCTC RCA PPM, adopt resolution number 21-001 related to the RCTC RCA PPM, approve the electronic use signature policy, and adopt resolution number 21-002 and forward to the commission for final action. Next slide, please. In order to finalize the revised PPM, staff has worked with legal counsel to ensure the updates are consistent with state and federal regulations and reflect best practices. With the committee's approval today, the revised PPM and electronic signature use policy will be taken to the February 10th commission meeting. The revised PPM and electronic signature use policy were approved at the January 20th RCA Executive Committee meeting, and the related resolution and ordinance will be introduced at the February 1st board meeting and adopted at the March 1st board meeting before becoming effective March 31st. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace, for a concise and complete report. Before we open it up to commissioners, do we have anyone online for public comments?
I don't see any hand raised from the public. We do have
Okay.
Commissioner Gregory.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gregory, you're up.
Good morning, and thank you for the staff report on this item and also the written report. It was very complete. I just have a couple of questions. One of them is, of course, there's a change to the use of the single signature authority, raising it from 1.5 million to 2 million, and also removing some constraints like having multiple changes on the same contract. There's probably good reasons for that, but I always think whenever we're going to make changes like that, that it's incumbent on somebody or to ask why and get a little explanation so we all feel comfortable with the change.
Absolutely, absolutely. A few years ago, the commission approved an increase to the executive director's individual contract authority from 150,000 to 250,000. At that time, staff reviewed single signature authority activity and did not recommend the change to the executive director's aggregate contract authority. However, based on a recent review of RCTC's contracts and consideration for the existing procurement threshold, staff and legal counsel felt that the recommended increase is appropriate. Additionally, in light of the recent implementation and management services agreement with RCA, future agreements that benefit both RCTC and RCA may be combined to realize efficiencies and economies of scale. And your approval will allow RCTC to be flexible to address these potential changes. Additionally, on a quarterly basis, staff prepares the single signature report for the commission, identifying all the contracts the executive director has entered into, simply to keep the commission informed of her single signature contract status and activity. Your other question regarding the language that was removed, simply it was ambiguous and confusing, and from a process standpoint, the language was no longer needed.
Okay, so do we anticipate there may be a need for that raised authority, or is it, I hate to call it that, but is it just kind of creep where we're kind of creeping up, adjusting for inflation? I mean, is there some reason that we anticipate that could happen? I know you did mention joint contracts.
The joint contracts, and I feel, again, since it's been a number of years since we've asked for the increase, and the last time we received approval for the contract authority, the individual contract authority from 150 to 250, it was because the federal guidelines were changed to reflect that much. And so now years later, we're just looking at the number of contracts that RCTC has and unpredictability about the RCA coming on board just allows additional flexibility for the commission to exercise contracts.
And if I may as well, that we expect, with the assumption of the managing agency responsibilities for RCA, that there will be a need to implement new contracts under that single signature authority. And so holding current authority at 1.5 million would eat into existing right of RCTC use of those funds. So had we not assumed RCA, we probably would have recommended to just hold the 1.5 million, but we now have another agency that has come on board with its own individual contracts. So yes, I would expect that there will be an increased use of single signature as a result of the RCA managing agency contract.
Very good, and thank you for the explanation. It's not, of course, meant to insinuate anything, but it's just, I just wanted to solicit that there was actually a thought process going into it. It wasn't just like, oh, it's up for review, so let's bump it up, even if we're not going to need it. So it doesn't sound like that was the case. My other question, hopefully, is easier, and although it may not be answerable, but for the electronic signature policy, would we be looking at possibly also having the per diem forms be able to be have an electronic signature, so we don't have to print them and rescan them? And if you're not to that point yet, I would recommend that maybe we try to look at that.
I can go into the electronic signature and policy and tell you what we can and can't use it for. I certainly, by my read, we could execute those electronically, but I'll throw that back to Lisa to see where we are on executing that electronically.
That would help all of us, so we're definitely looking into it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gregory. Supervisor Washington, you're up.
Thank you. And I've got a quick question for you, really a little bit of a tangent, but your answer to Commissioner Gregory kind of made me wonder, with the merger, if you will, of RCTC and RCA, the need for higher authorization limits, made me wonder, how much bigger are we now in terms of overall budget by adding RCA? I mean, do you have a percentage that you could give us increase in the size of the two organizations together?
Well, percentage wise, it's not very much. Our RCA's budget ballpark is in the 45 million-ish range, right around there. Compared to our budget, which I think with the latest adjustments, Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, we're in the $1 billion range.
Okay.
So it is a very small percentage budget wise. Where we'll likely see a need for joint contracts is in the area of outreach, legislative affairs, but most significantly probably in the right-of-way acquisition arena.
Okay.
So things like on-call contracts for appraisal services, acquisition services. So if that gives you kind of a flavor of the kind of contracts we would see coming through RCA, and there are many others as well, but those are the primary areas.
Okay, yeah, so I guess budgets are that's not necessarily connected to the authority needed to process. They apparently have very large contracts that need to be processed, and not necessarily connected with their overall budget per se.
Right, and again, most of the where we would anticipate in the coming months is in the land acquisition side.
Right.
The expectation, but again, part of our first 6 months effort here is in doing an assessment of exactly where the resources are needed and what kind of resources are needed.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ann.
Ms. Trevino, you wanted to chime in?
Yes, if I could just add on to Ann's response, the RCTC and RCA budgets are separate. The actual impact to RCTC's budget for the additional staff and some of the contracts that Ann was referring to I believe for the 6 months, the estimate was around $2 million. And so, you know, with regard to amending some of our existing contracts or needing to enter into new contracts, that's why that was one of the other justifications for the increase in the threshold.
Thanks, Teresa.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anyone else requesting to speak. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion from the commissioners.
Third district, I'll move staff's recommendation.
Second, Raymond Gregory.
May we have a roll call, please?
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Banning, Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake.
Aye.
Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella,
Yes.
Desert Hot Springs,
Aye.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Palm Desert, Palm Springs,
Yes.
San Jacinto, Riverside,
Yes.
Waldemar.
Yes.
That item passes.
Thank you. Item number 8, a state and federal legislative update from David Nixon.
Yes, good morning, Chair White and committee members. I'm pleased to bring you an update on activities taking place at the state and federal level. Today, I'll start with the federal update. Last week, President Biden was sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. As I mentioned at the last commission meeting, his administration's foremost activities will focus on COVID-19 response and relief. However, we expect to see a lot of activities during the first month of the administration on several policy areas. About a week before the inauguration, the Biden transition team released their COVID-19 American Rescue Plan proposal, a $1.9 trillion relief plan aimed at providing individual financial assistance, small business assistance, and local and state aid. In addition, the proposal offers additional relief for those transit operators hardest hit by COVID-19 pandemic. We expect Congress to begin work on COVID-19 relief legislation in the coming weeks. If the Biden administration and Congress can agree on a new COVID bill, it's expected that one of the next priorities will be to develop an economic stimulus and recovery plan that could include infrastructure investment as a way to jumpstart the economy. We also know that the federal service transportation programs expire on September 30th, 2021. So House and Senate committees will begin work towards reauthorizing these programs in the coming weeks and months as well. As we saw last year in the various pieces of surface transportation legislation advanced by the House and Senate, infrastructure resilience, environmental policies, and safety will be priority policy areas. We expect a series of hearings to take place, and RCTC is working with key congressional committees and our delegation members to advocate our policy priorities. The federal appropriations process will begin in earnest this spring and summer. Congress will need a new budget deal in order to complete this appropriations process. We expect to see the new Biden administration budget sometime in February or in early March, which will provide us with the administration's budget priorities and policy roadmap for the new Congress. Last week, the confirmation hearing for U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary-designate former Mayor Pete Buttigieg took place. A final Senate vote is expected soon. We continue to monitor these discussions and will work with Congress on details as appropriate. Staff will continue to keep the commission updated as details emerge. Turning quickly to the state update, as I mentioned in my previous report to the commission, the governor submitted his 2021-22 state budget proposal to the legislature, a $227.2 billion fiscal plan that provides funding for COVID-19 response and economic relief efforts, and is approximately $25 billion more than the spending plan the governor signed in June 2020. Fuel excise tax revenues used to fund transportation projects, while still growing moderately, are expected to be lower than pre-pandemic forecasts by a total of $1.5 billion through 2024-25 fiscal year. The budget proposal, however, maintains Caltrans's staff and budget levels in part to be adequately staffed and in preparation of a federal infrastructure stimulus package. Gavin Newsom sent a letter to President Biden last week to support the American Rescue Plan, including seeking funding for high-speed rail, authority for California to set its own emission standards, and invest in schools, broadband, housing, and renewable energy. As the legislature continues to meet and discuss the governor's budget proposal, RCTC staff continues to monitor bill introductions and will provide the commission with updates as we get further into the legislative session. This concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. Are there anyone wishing to speak? Not seeing any. This is item received and filed, so we don't need a motion, correct?
Correct.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 9. In a moment, I'm going to ask for nominations for the chair and vice chair for 2021. I'd like to request that you use the raise your hand feature if you would like to make a nomination. And we'll go ahead and start with the nomination for chair. Is there anyone interested in making a nomination? No one's jumping in here. There we go. Commissioner Gregory.
Chair White, are you interested in another year?
Absolutely.
I nominate Lloyd White as chairman of this committee.
I'll second that.
Wow. I guess we need a roll call.
District 2,
Absolutely, yes.
District 3,
Yes, yay.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Banning, Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
100% yes.
Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella,
Yes.
Desert Hot Springs,
Aye.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Palm Springs,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
Wildemar.
Yes.
That item passes. Congratulations, Chair White.
Thank you very much. Hopefully I'll be able to conduct a meeting from the dais sometime next year. So now I need nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Raymond Gregory.
Desert Hot Springs second.
And can we get a roll call?
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Absolutely.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Cathedral City,
Thank you all. Yes.
Coachella,
Yes.
Desert Hot Springs,
Aye.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Palm Springs,
Yes.
Riverside,
Aye.
Wildemar.
Yes.
That item also passes for Vice Chair Gregory.
Thank you. Congratulations. And we have no items pulled from the consent calendar agenda, so we'll move on to Commissioner Staff Report. Is there anyone who's interested in speaking? And I see Ann Meyer, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, commissioners. Good morning, Commissioner Gregory. You clearly see that asking really good questions at budget and implementation meeting usually leads to serving in a leadership role. So congratulations to you, and Commissioner White. You have also been very keenly interested in budget issues for a number of years. So thank you very much. Really about the only thing I wanted to share today is we have several new commissioners who are joining their first RCTC meeting. So I'd just like to recognize, and if we were there in person, we would be able to greet you personally. But I would like to welcome Commissioner Molina from Calamasa. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning and thank you. I've been wanting to be part of this group for many years. Thank you.
There you have. We're happy to have you. Also from the City of Riverside, Commissioner Locke Dawson. So good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. I appreciate it. I do wish we were in person, but I wish we were in person for a lot of things other than just this RCTC meeting. So hopefully getting there soon. Appreciate the opportunity to participate.
But and absolutely from the City of Coachella, Commissioner Delgado. So welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I think I got everyone who's at their first meeting for RCTC. If I didn't, please let me know. Anyway, thank you all very much. And that's really about all I have to share this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. So it looks like we're done. So we'll adjourn this to our next meeting.
Chair, I'd like to, real quickly, I know I didn't say it earlier. Those of you who are not aware that as of this morning, the governor has lifted the stay-at-home orders. So life will be changing. There's a whole write-up in the California Department of Public Health. And we will revert back to purple, but we are out from under the thumb and we can look at moving forward. And I hope that we all can continue to take it serious so that we don't get back where we were, which is someplace most of us didn't want to be. But continue to wear masks, wash hands, keep distance, and just be safe. And if it's not for you, it's for the businesses that we're trying to get back open. It's for our kids back at school. We just got to get moving forward.
Mr. Chair, third district here, could I add something to our inimitable board chair's comments?
Absolutely.
And I'm glad she remembered to make that announcement about the lifting of the stay-at-home orders, puts us back into the purple tier, and all of those things that she just said still apply, social distancing, mask wearing. But I do want to add one comment about vaccinations. The county has been managing this. We are shifting how we do this. And what we've been doing has not been working. And it really made the problem much worse when the governor announced a larger group of eligible constituents, namely the group 65 and older. We currently have 800,000 Riverside County residents who are eligible for a vaccination. And so, as you can imagine, that's a very large number trying to fit through a very small door to get appointments. Today, this morning, Supervisor Spiegel and I will join the other three colleagues to strategize how we improve that system. We may be moving to a new appointment structure on the internet. We may also be moving to a different way to make the appointments. But I just want this group to know, because you're important leaders in your community, that we are working on this issue. We are aware of the problems. I get a lot of comments about what the problems are. Well, I'm fully aware, and I know Supervisor Spiegel is fully aware of the problems. So you can say you heard it here first, but we are working on those issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. I just wanted to chime in on this real quickly. We reviewed this pretty in detail this last week at a council meeting, and we have a lot of 55 plus communities in Beaumont and the surrounding areas. And one issue I think is a big concern is for those in the 65 plus community that are eligible, not being as internet savvy as they need to be. And so as a city, we're trying to open our doors to provide support and people to help reach out to those and help them with their appointments. So when you discuss it today, if there's a way that can be facilitated so that volunteers can help work with the 65 plus communities to get vaccination appointments, I just want to let you know that our city is on board and will provide volunteers for our area if you can facilitate that. So I just wanted to chime in.
Yeah, that's great. And that is certainly an issue that we have talked about. On Saturday, I joined 5 of my own staff members and we attempted to get appointments. We had a short list of people that had called directly to my office. So we got 5 appointments, but it was very hard to get those appointments. Also, our Office on Aging has been assisting seniors through the 211 call system. So we have a backlog of seniors that we will work through to get them first. Likely we'll get them before we open up any more appointment windows. The problem is again, the opening, the bandwidth of getting those appointments is very narrow. And when you add to that someone who is not very tech savvy, it just makes it nearly impossible for them to navigate through that. So we will be changing the system, and I will pass on your desire to be a part of a volunteer effort. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn for our next week. We'll be scheduled for 9:30.
Councilmember Lloyd, just so you know, we can't hear you very well. Your audio's gotten very muffled and it's hard to hear you. It's almost like you switched to different microphones.